Hello, this is Pick, and welcome back to my guide for FTB Sky's Expert Mode. Riffing off of last episode, we're going to be doing a lot more automation today, and you can't make bigger requests in Applied Energistics without bigger crafting storage. As a refresher from last time, crafting storage is what the system needs to make requests. Larger storages are capable of handling larger recipes. You can combine them, but it's generally best practice to have multiple of the smaller ones as well as the bigger ones. At a point, I'll have probably 4 1Ks and 4 4Ks. When you start making a whole bunch of requesters, you're going to end up with a lot of requests going through the system at a given time. Therefore, you're going to want to have a lot of crafting storages in order to handle all of those recipes going simultaneously. Since the most important thing to automate is stuff for automation, I'll be making auto-crafting recipes for all the QIO components. Having these on demand is going to be very handy. These multi-blocks don't have native ways of being sped up, so we're going to have to use time torches to make them process things quicker. You can put on several time torches, as many as you can fit around the controller. I'm unsure if entangled blocks work. I don't think they do in that manner. I'd definitely slap on at least one though, as you can use entangled blocks and not have to touch it with a bunch of cables. You should also work towards making speed upgrades for various other types of machines too. Having too many time torches will cause lag issues, so only use them if you don't have any other options. Sometimes you get machines that you can't automate directly. The assembly table is one of those machines. It uses input and output buffers instead of actual machine inputs. To circumvent this problem, you can simply use a chest or something as a buffer. It will register as a chest on the terminal, but you're gonna have to just remember what it is based off of the available recipes. Of course, the output is also disjointed, meaning that it's not touching the input, so you have to pipe back in from the other side. Also, when using logistical transporters to put items back in the pattern provider, make sure you set it to push on the face that's touching the pattern provider. This will prevent the provider from getting confused on where it's supposed to send items. You'll also want to make sure that no other inventories are touching it. Let's make an advanced Inscriber. This is probably the easiest machine in the world to automate. All you have to do is slap the pattern provider on it, and it automatically takes care of the inputs and outputs as long as the recipe is correct. And I guess you gotta give it power. You're also going to want to put some acceleration cards in it. It can support up to 5 of them. It doesn't have to deal with any of that sided stuff the regular Inscriber has. It even auto-pushes back into the pattern provider for you. Because I sporadically need it, I'm going to set up Polyethylene Automation, and I'll just be using the thermopneumatic processing plant and fluid mixer I already had placed down. It's not a difficult matter, you just need to have sulfur be automatically exported into the processing plant along with the ethanol that I already have for biodiesel. At that, I'm just going to use fluid pipes to do all the transferring. I'll be keeping all of this inside an ender tank. I guess theoretically I could have hooked this up with the fluid drawer to the storage controller, but perhaps if I neaten some of my mechanism machines. I'd recommend writing down what all of your codes are for your ender tanks if you're going to use them extensively. I keep them on a clipboard now. That's just where I write down stuff. It's from Create. It's mostly used for checklisting stuff, but just as a notepad it's fine too. You can write them down in whatever way you want. I write down the color IDs. Yes, I have all of those memorized. I've played too many Complete the Monument maps back in the day to not remember the wool order. White, orange, magenta, light blue, yellow, lime, pink, gray, light gray, cyan, purple, blue, brown, green, red, black. Or you could just write the color name down. Or just not use ender tanks. Now's as good a time as any to automate distillation of volatile redstone. Using QIO, I'm sending redstone over to the acetaldehyde plant that can make volatile redstone. Then I just send it over via ender tank, and that goes into the fractionating still where it gets distilled into redstone acid, which gets put into the fluid trash can, and the destabilized redstone that goes into the fluid drawer. And of course the substrate is getting sent out to the left side. Insulators are nice for the lazy. I just want some quick and dirty acacia log automation. Automated latex means automated polyethylene, among other things. At this point, if you're making a system, you might as well make sure it's hooked up to your Applied Energistics network anyway. I was about to hook up this pattern provider to make stuff automatically in the mana pool, There are applied botanics options for this, but it's much easier and simpler, at least for the time being, to just do it like this. A precision dropper will drop exactly what you want into the mana pool, and then the filtered item collector picks it up and puts it back in the pattern provider. There was one quirk that I didn't realize though about how I had things laid out. Right above me is the Vitalic source link on the witch farm. This is actually sending source into the pattern provider. There's a mod that allows cross-compatibility between Ars Nouveau's source and Applied Energistics. There are special drives to keep source in if you'd like. However, if I just let it run, it's going to fill the entire return inventory with source. To fix that, I just move the source link up a couple blocks so that the provider is out of range. Again, you could use some Applied Botanic stuff, I might get into it later, but for right now, the precise dropper does the job. Now it's time to automate the arc furnace. Of course, I'll be using a buffer chest for this, as putting it into the arc furnace directly with the pattern provider won't work when you have two different inputs going into two different locations. To circumvent this, I'm just using a logistical sorter and a buffer chest. It's the same type of logistical sorter filtering I've used in the past. One difference, however, is that I'm making sure that the sorter only sends one item at a time per recipe. This ensures that all 12 of the slots are going to get used. Naturally, that's going to increase the power consumption, but I'll be upgrading power generation today to compensate. If you just have it send in stacks at a time, it will only use one slot, which might be helpful if you're going on power economy, but it definitely won't help on the speed front, especially for things like Signalum or Dash. It sure is nice just watching the system go ahead and do what it does. All that stuff that I don't have to do myself anymore. Isn't it nice and relaxing? I think it is in a way. That's just how large-scale automation is. Though at the same time, this isn't the most interesting thing visually because it's just a bunch of things in boxes on a grid. Who wants to automate osmium? By using the requester to make sure there's always a supply of platinum dust and osmium dust in the system, I can automatically have a centrifugal separator producing osmium dust. The redstone is going to disable the machine itself. That's what's going to determine if there's enough osmium already in the system. The requester makes sure that there's enough platinum dust being produced. However, we of course need to take into account when the platinum dust is coming back into the system, since on most loops it's going to make platinum instead of osmium. This is why the requester is going to make sure everything stays at a particular platinum dust threshold. Should it dip under the threshold, it'll make more, but otherwise it'll just keep cycling the same platinum dust until it runs out. Like anything else, you can just hook up a thermopneumatic processing plant to a pattern provider. Make sure you have an upgrade to auto-eject back into the pattern provider, of course. Though I think I was having some trouble with that, so you can always use logistical transporters in its place. Weirdly enough, there aren't too many more thermopneumatic processing plant recipes I would like to automate via demand crafting. So for now, I guess it'll only have the one recipe. Of course, if you're doing this, you have to make sure it's the proper temperature as well. Now to automate components to make more diesel generators. While most of the simple ones don't need to really be gone over, I will at least discuss the more complex steps. Or I guess rather things I haven't done already. So here we have the pressure chamber. I have my input drawer and my output drawer. It's the same thing I had before, except now there's a pattern provider on it. That's simple. This is for making those green circuits. Now to automate andesite casings. This is a little more complex than it might look at first glance. Much like the arc furnace, we have two different inputs we're working with here. You could filter the deployer, but that means it's not modular for other recipes. And there's still also a fail chance when it comes to what goes where. So, who else to help us in our little predicament than the logistical sorter yet again? Not even the last time you'll be seeing it this episode. Send one item to the deployer, send an item to the depot, use the logistical sorter to only send out the finished products from the depot and back into the pattern provider, and there you have it. That's the thing with AE. When in doubt, use a buffer inventory. It'll usually help you out of whatever situation you find yourself in. That was enough to batch request one diesel generator, but of course we're going to want to hook things up so that we can supply everything for it. What are andesite casings without andesite alloy? This was a simple matter. Just hook up the pattern provider to a basin that's filtered to make andesite alloy, and then I'm taking advantage of the auto output feature, and that allows me to input back into the pattern provider from the depot. Who's ready for batch crafting of elemental craft things? I sent a new dense cable all the way over here, in a different color, that being white. If you're not going to use P2P tunnels, you'll definitely want to have your dense cables as different colors so you know what's going where. Also to stop them from cross-connecting, of course. And because I can't seem to stop using it today, how about we use a logistical sorter to get things done, huh? At least for the pure Infuser anyway. You can probably figure out how it goes. It's the same type of setup I use for basically everything else with this thing. Something worth noting is that you can hook up your elemental infusers and elemental binders straight up to a pattern provider, and it'll automatically supply the ingredients in the right order with the right recipe. You might want to put on blocking mode though to make sure it doesn't, overstock the inventory. Given that we already have all of this infrastructure in place though, it's a pretty simple job to just put up a bunch of pattern providers and such. Make sure you are using correct numbers of channels though. Obviously you can only hold 8 on a small line at a time, so you'll need more than one line if you're planning on doing 4 elements for a whole bunch of pattern providers. Something else worth noting is that I'm being exceptionally stingy with my channels. I'm routing everything back into one single pattern provider. You might want to use some faster mechanism pipes if you're going to do that. Also, if it wasn't obvious, I'm doing a lot of background automation stuff behind the scenes. You don't need to see me make recipes for literally everything in the game. I do expect you to know some things about modded Minecraft. This is just a guide to help you with this mod pack. Here's the elemental binder in action, automated by pattern provider. Just remember to use blocking mode and everything should run well. You can upgrade your mechanism transmitters without taking them apart by just holding down right click with an alloy. It'll automatically upgrade all of the transmitters on the network as long as they're touching. Very useful for retrofitting all of my advanced cables into elite ones. I'm starting to get tired of fighting Afrits for Afrit essence. Thankfully, we can get around that with hostile neural networks. To start with this, I'm going to want to make some things. The deep learner is something important to make, as well as a model framework. I'm going to right-click on the Merid Crusher with this model framework, and that will set it so that it's collecting data from Marids. Now, in order to gain data, we're going to need to kill some Marids. This, of course, means I'm going to need to summon them, 6 to be precise. Every one you kill will provide 1 piece of data to the next level. Well, it actually provides a lot more per data. I think it's 10, but it kills 6 to get up to the basic level. To use the deep learner, you simply open it with right click and put your data model in. You can hold it in your offhand to see the progress, and every one you kill while it's in your inventory will provide you with data. Once you do that, you're going to need a simulation chamber and a loot fabricator. The first is what's going to simulate the killing. Every time it does a kill, it gets another piece of data. This is less than the data you get from killing it manually, but it also happens automatically, which is kind of the point. Different mobs are going to use different amounts of power. The Marid uses a moderate amount of power, a little higher than regular mobs, but lower than a Wither boss. Put the data model in, along with some prediction matrices. I'd recommend using the requester to make sure you always have stock of them. Once you automatically have them being inserted into the simulation chamber, it'll get going and keep running on its own. Then all you have to do is, once you get your pristine data, make sure it's automatically going into the loot fabricator, and select the thing that you want it to be producing from that loot. Of course, you'll have to make sure you're dumping that extra matter somewhere. Higher tier predictions have a higher chance of producing pristine matter, and at the max tier in this mod pack, I believe it's 99.5% of a chance of getting that, so it's really good at max tier. I tried, I really did. I wanted to use integrated dynamics to automate the enchanting apparatus, but I just felt like it was way too complicated to do something so simple. So, guess who we're using again? It's our buddy old pal, the logistical sorter, at it yet again. This is the definition of if it isn't broke, don't fix it, right? There's just no reason to overcomplicate this with integrated dynamics. It will also always send the middle item last because that's how it works with recipes. I did make a note though to expand to 10 source jars to keep this thing stocked with source. And of course, to make mana steel, I'm going to need each of the elements, so there's some automation for that. The wheat farm is perfect for this purpose. At the end of the day, I'm keeping a solid stock, so even though I'm using a lot of the source, once it fills up, it shouldn't be that big of a problem. I also decided that I wanted some travel anchors at this point. We'll make getting around the base just that little bit quicker. By holding the staff and right-clicking on an anchor, it'll teleport you to it. You can also teleport between them if you're standing on one. I just carry the staff around anyway. You can also shift right click to blink through walls. I'm going to make a singularity now. I'm not going to be able to use what I want to use it for just yet, but I'll at least craft the singularity. In order to do this, you're going to need a matter condenser and a 64K component. And you need to fill this thing with lots of whatever. A lot of people would, in other packs, use a sink, but since sinks don't make infinite water in this mod pack, we're going to have to use something else. That something else is going to, of course, be a cobble gen tier 5. But not just the cobble gen. Of course, if I were to just let the cobble gen run, I think my math told me that it's going to take over 4 hours in order to do that. So instead, we're going to use the temporal pouch to speed the cobble gen up. It automatically exports to the block above it, after losing about 4 hours in my temporal pouch. Huh. That's awfully convenient. I wonder why it's 4 hours. It'll make a singularity. Then simply blow up that resulting singularity with an ender pearl, and you'll produce a quantum entangled singularity. Again, can't use them yet, but hold on to them for later. I figured it was about time to make a Nether Mob Farm. Simple cursed earth farm, or a dreadful dirt. Lamp on the top to turn it off, item collector to grab the stuff, drawers to store all the items, and a redstone clock pulsing as fast as possible with a whole bunch of cog blocks to make the dreadful dirt tick faster. Cog blocks are like redstone wire, but in a block form, and it's really useful to have them. While it will take a little while and a little bit of AFKing to get all the stuff I need, I can at least make use of what's going on with the faster ticking. I could chunk load it if I wanted to, but I'm kinda caught between 4 chunks on this farm, which I didn't plan that very well. It doesn't really matter though, I guess. I'm just gonna get a little bit of wither skeleton skulls since they spawn naturally, among some other drops. Of course, I'm using a pedestal to do the killing. Make sure you're using at least looting 4 on that sword. Might get into apotheosis at some point, but not today. What I want right now are wither bones and wither skeleton skulls. If you remember that hostile neural networks, I'm going to be killing 6 withers to get a wither model. Now, one of the reasons I wanted nether stars was so that I could make a builder quarry, specifically with silk touch. If I get another few sacks of Desh and Ostrom, I should be clear to move on to the next chapter. Well, I say clear, I just mean have enough of each of those ingredients. So, place the builder down, and then shift right click on it with the quarry card. You're then going to have to define the volume in which the thing is going to mine. So, dig down a few blocks, maybe to like Y80 so you're not starting too high, right click on that moonstone, and then you're going to want to jump up, go to the other corner, and dig all the way down to bedrock and right click on that. This will set the coordinates to which you're going to mine with the quarry. The thing is a bit of a power hog, so you're going to want to make sure you have the actual power to support it. It doesn't need to be running at full capacity all the time though, so don't worry. It will also load the chunk it's mining in as long as it itself is loaded. And to get power up here, of course I'm going to use Flux networks. On the moon you're only going to run into 6 blocks, so 2 drawers of 2x2 should be enough. Mars is going to have 5, I think. It also needs an inventory on top and a redstone signal to run. I'm using some maximum tier logistical transporters to make sure all of the stuff leaves the chests and goes into the drawers properly, and of course I'm voiding anything I don't want, which is like everything except for Desh and cheese. It will also help to run this thing through the machine infuser. This is a machine that allows you to make your RF Tools machines run better with whatever traits that it says on the tooltip. For the purpose of the builder, it will make it both faster and use less energy per block. That won't necessarily change the tick rate, but it will absolutely make the machine run faster overall because it's using less energy per block. It takes 4 stacks of dimensional shards to infuse a machine to 100%, but you should have plenty. Now while that's running, I'll go ahead and make a Baubley heart canister. 10 of them actually. Well, as many as I can make given how many wither bones I have. Each one, when put into the heart amulet, and while you are wearing the heart amulet, will increase your heart by that number of hearts. It can boost you by up to 40 hearts. They do get pricier the more you get, but at least I'm getting loopies that drop blue hearts, so if I ever want to convert them, I'll have plenty to work with. This will make bosses I'm fighting soon just that much easier. Apparently I didn't do that whole cog block thing until now. Now you'll see that it's going to be spawning mobs much quicker than it was before from the old footage. I am mooching off of the flight that I have in my base, so obviously that's only going to last for a minute. You know, be careful working over the void, nothing you've never heard before. The faster you make it, the faster it'll spawn mobs, and that'll just mean you don't have to spend that long AFKing in the nether. Again, you could chunk load it if you want. And you can add in chunks with a command to have more force load chunks. I'm just not doing that. I put that wither model in after fighting all the withers. You'll note that it uses a whole lot more power to run withers than it does merid crushers. With the power upgrades I've gotten recently though, my system can definitely handle it. In fact, I think it's about time we upgraded our power network once more. Now it's time to make the advanced mixer. This can handle a large number of recipes from the pneumatic craft machines. One of which is the recipe for Proto Chorus. You know, that one with that quantum flood and mineral berries. Like anything else, we have a nice easy pattern provider to stick on the top and then just take it out with some pipes. Quantum flood is made in the quantum assembler at this stage. Make sure to speed it up with some time torches if you think it's going a little slow for your tastes. It's always nice to have Proto Chorus stocked anyway because you need it to make ender tanks and such. To get crystallized chorus chunks, you're going to need to send Proto Chorus through the mechanical squeezer. As before, it only exports items from the bottom. However, it's also not a guaranteed drop. This means you can't just give it a recipe like any normal item, so I'm just going to be dumping as many of these things in as possible and turning it off when the stash is above the threshold. You know, the usual QIO stuff I've been doing. The requesters will still help for keeping a stock of Proto Chorus supplied though. You can also make a mechanical basin to automatically solidify the liquid chorus that comes out. You will need to craft those blocks into the chorus itself though, so make sure you have some type of crafting mechanism along the line. Sadly, compacting drawers don't work because the recipe doesn't go in two directions. Still, extra chorus is extra chorus. Now, just like the mana pool, I can send things through the elven portal and pick them up with a filtered collector, and that'll make that Dragonstone that I need. If nothing else, you'll definitely want to have this auto-crafting in your system, and set up a requester to make sure you have a stock of it available. Like the other stuff, there is an alternative that allows you to craft things within your ME system, but I don't have that yet, and it's a little pricey. I guess I could make it if I wanted, but I don't really care to at the moment. After setting up an auto-crafting recipe for Flux-Infused gems, I can make that into Flux-Infused diesel. This once again uses the advanced mixer, and it just requires power and it makes a lot for not that much. I was messing around with the textures, so you'll have to forgive the weird quantum assembler texture that it ends up having at the moment. In any case, this makes Flux-Infused diesel, which is better than the Force-Infused diesel it's derived from. You don't need to make this upgrade if you don't want to, but, you know, I wanted to do it. I also needed to automate the Flux-Infused gems anyway for Flux-Infused oil, so it's not like this was a wasted effort either way. Most of my SU goes into power generation at this point, but I guess that's kind of what I would expect anyway. You kind of lean away from all that high-end create stuff for the most part at this stage. That's it for today. I needed a bit of a break from longer episodes, especially after the previous one. We got a lot of applied energistics done, and I'll be spending the next episode working my way to the Tier 3 rocket. So, this has been Pick, I'm glad to have seen you, and I hope to see you again. Remember to check my doc for its updates.